What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel. And I am back with a brand new series for this channel. Basically, every month I'm going to be doing this series. It's called Levi's Deep Cuts, where I kind of got inspired by Thralls of Metal to do this series, whereas over on Thralls of Metal's channel, they go through all their discography rankings and do like a greatest hits, like the best songs from each album to make a greatest hits thing. I decided to kind of take that, but instead of doing greatest hits, I wanted to focus on deep cuts, like lesser known songs, and for some of them, they might be better than like the hits or the main live staple songs in a band's catalog. So I thought, how about let's focus on lesser known songs, less popular songs, and songs that just overall get underappreciated and overlooked. And I'm basically going in order of every discography ranking I have done thus far on the channel, which there's been a lot of them. And yeah, it's going to take me a while to get through all of these bands every month. So for this month, for the month of April, I decided to kick it off with the very first band that I did a discography ranking for, and that was way back in 2021, and I am talking about Opeth. So it seems rather appropriate to do Opeth first for this series because, well, for anybody who knows me knows that Opeth is one of my favorite bands of all time. And so basically how I decided to do this first edition of Deep Cuts, I decided to limit myself to only one song per album. And there are 14 albums from Opeth. So I decided, you know what? Let's just only do one song because I feel like if this was to have been a thing, they would have to do multiple discs, multiple vinyl, multiple cassettes, because the songs are long, so you probably can't fit everything into one vinyl or one disc or one cassette tape. So I decided to go with just one song from each album for the first edition of Deep Cuts this month being Opeth. So, we're going to go all the way back to 1995 with the debut album Orchid, and, well, you could look at, honestly, this and the next album as everything is deep cuts. However, I had to, like, really think about, like, a particular song that either wasn't as known back then or didn't get to be played live really a whole lot, especially after the first few albums. So I decided to go with the song Under the Weeping Moon. So, Under the Weeping Moon, it's the second track on this album, and, well, it's an awesome song, and it's actually, funny enough, one of the shorter songs on the album at just under 10 minutes long, and it's definitely got a lot of what Opeth was going for in the early days, like combining their love of death metal, black metal, and progressive rock, and just bring it all together. Like, yeah, definitely this early era of Opeth definitely had a little bit of a black metal and almost melodic death metal vibe. But yeah, this song I always have been a big fan of. Granted, my favorite track on this album is Forest of October, but because Forest of October did get played quite a bit live early on and even in the middle era of Opeth, I decided to go with Under the Weeping Moon since it's not as popular and I think it's a legit fantastic song. So we move on to 1996, a year later with Morning Rise, and this was a pretty easy decision for me considering I don't recall this song ever being played live from this album, and that is Black Rose Immortal, the longest song of their career at over 20 minutes, and it is 20 minutes of progressive death metal, progressive black metal wonder. I mean, it's got a lot of like great triplet chugs, triplet stomps, great guitar harmonies, melodies, nasty vocals, but also a ton of great and beautiful acoustic play. And also, I feel like this was the song that kind of helped Michael Ockerfeld branch out more into the clean vocal realm because, yeah, you got some of that on Orchid, but he definitely pushed his clean delivery further on Morning Rise, and this song was one of the big ones where he really spread his wings, so to speak, when it came to his vocals. But yeah, it's like got everything you want in Opeth, and then some. So then we move on 2 years after that. We go to 1998's My Arms, Your Hearse, which this definitely marked the era where basically any black metal tag can be pretty much gone from the Opeth discography, and it is just straight up progressive death metal. And this one, I had to take two songs out of the equation because they were both big live staples. One of them still a live staple, Win and Demon of the Fall. So every other track was completely fair game. However, I decided to go with the second track of this album, April Ethereal, because I think this definitely showcases where Opeth was starting to go into where they were going to next, as it's got less melodeath tropes and more like straight up death metal, but also a lot of like classic heavy metal nods, great prog song structure, and also again Michael Lagerfeld's clean vocals starting to get pushed further into the repertoire of these songs. And also I just love the beautiful melodies on this song. I mean, I'm just gonna say beautiful melodies on almost every single track that I'm talking about in this video. So, with that being said, my pick from My Arms Your Hearse is April Ethereal. We move on a year later to 1999 with Still Life, and really there was one song I had to leave off the cutting room floor, and that was The More, since that's really the big song on this album that's most well known and gets played live quite a bit. So again, every other track's fair game. The track I decided to go for from Still Life is the second track, Godhead's Lament. Like this, in my opinion, is like the one of the perfect balancing acts of brutality and beauty. Like the opening riff and chug and drum patterns kind of was like a hybrid of Death and Morbid Angel a little bit, and it's got like this darker, sinister quality to it. But the further along the song goes, it just gets more melodic, more beautiful, and of course, one of the best choruses of the entire Opeth discography. It is an earworm, you get beautiful guitar harmonies, and of course, Michael's voice soars to the sky. So, yeah, I decided to go with Godhead's Lament for my pick from Still Life. Then we fast forward to 2001 with their grand big like breakout album Blackwater Park. And for this one there were 3 tracks I left off the cutting room floor here, and they were Harvest, The Drapery Falls, and the title track. So all the other songs were more fair games, but the one I decided to go with is the opening track, The Leper Affinity. I mean, it is just a dark, sinister, murky, but yet wonderfully crafted track. And also, what makes this song really stand out for me is the way it all concludes with dark piano dirges. After all, that was, I believe, Steven Wilson, who, while he produced this album, I believe he also contributed to all the piano and keyboard parts on this album, and delivers a dark, haunting piano melody to bring the song to a close. So my pick from Blackwater Park would be The Leper Affinity. Then we move on to 2002 with the release of arguably the heaviest Opeth album, Deliverance. And there was really just one song I left off, and that's the title track, considering I think that's like the big closing track for Opeth shows to this day. So I left that off, so all the other songs on Deliverance were fair game. Speaking of fair, pun might be a little bit intended because the song I am picking for Deliverance is A Fair Judgment. I think this song, it did get played a little bit during the tour for Damnation and Deliverance, which Damnation's coming up next. But after that, doesn't really get played anymore, so not a lot of people seem to be aware of this song, unless you're a die-hard Opeth fan like myself. But the reason I went with A Fair Judgment is because it's the one song on this album that's all clean vocals. It's still got like a heavy yet melodic, it's almost doom metal at times, but especially the final 2+ minutes is like the doomiest thing Opeth has ever written. It feels like Morbid Angel at their slowest, but it also has a lot of Black Sabbath to it, and it just comes together into this, like, big, heavy, evil closing moment of an awesome melodic song. Plus, you get a duet between Michael Ockerfeld and Steven Wilson on this track during the bridge. So, yeah, I went with Fair Judgment as my pick from Deliverance. So, speaking of Damnation, that's the next album coming up, 2003 to be exact, and I could have gone with almost any track except for Window Pane, because that was the big song that most people got to see live. So the one track from Damnation I decided to go with is Closure. Mainly because it's got like really smooth, like tribal percussion, but also, again, wonderful acoustic play and the vocal harmonies between Michael and Steven. But the final couple of minutes where you get these like haunting guitars that almost sounds slightly out of tune, but it makes for this like haunting, ethereal, atmospheric ending. But you also get those like really cool tribal drums on top of it, so it made for a really cool dynamic. So I would go with Closure as my pick from Damnation. Um, Moving on to 2005, we get Ghost Reveries, and the only songs that were disqualified, at least in my mind, from this album were Ghost of Perdition and The Grand Conjuration. So that actually made this pick a lot easier. I went with Harlequin Forest, which is my personal favorite Opeth song of all time. It's just got everything I love about Opeth. Amazing clean vocals, demonic roars. You also get like great heavy riffs, but wonderful guitar harmonies, and just soothing songwriting. And yeah, I mean, what more can I say about this song that I haven't said already in the past? I mean, like I said, it's my favorite song by this band for a reason, and it is my pick as the best deep cut from Ghost Reveries. Moving on 3 years later to 2008, we get the release of Watershed, and there was only, honestly, there was just one song that, I left off, and that was Porcelain Heart, because that was the big single, so to speak, from this album. So I decided to go with the other somber cut from this album, and that is Burden, which, in my opinion, in terms of the more balladish songs from Opeth, probably the best song they did in terms of a ballad. It is sad. It has a lot of meaning to myself and a lot of other people, and especially the solo and the harmonies to bring the song to a close. They can bring tears to your eyes. I know they did for me quite a lot when I was first getting into this album. So, yeah, I went with Burden as my pick. So now we get into the 2010s decade where they went into more of a progressive rock direction, uh, full stop. So we get to 2011's Heritage, and really the only song on this album I didn't include in terms of a deep cut was The Devil's Orchard. So I decided to go with the track I Feel the Dark. I think this song could have been like the great like middle ground between like Watershed and Damnation. Like it kind of has a bit of a heavy tone to it. It's definitely more 70s inspired, but it's not like super hefty, but it's still got a lot of darkness to it. It's sinister, and Michael doing all clean vocals. I mean, I know people miss the roar, but I love Michael's clean vocals just as much, if not maybe just a tad bit more, just because he just got such an angelic voice that I just would love to hear all day long, all day strong. So I went with I Feel the Dark as my pick from Heritage. Next up, we get to 2014's Pale Communion. And this one, I could have picked almost any song except for the song Cusp of Eternity, because that was, I think, the big single. So I actually decided to go with the longest track on this album, Moon Above, Sun Below. Nearly 11 minutes, and it honestly, I think, perfectly balances like a heavy 70s rock sound with their prog rock stylings they were going for at this point, because there are some big like 70s hard rock hooks on this track, but you also get some really like moody and like just ethereal atmosphere on this track that I think really made this one stand out on Pale Communion. At least from what I remember when listening to the album when it came out in 2014, this was like one of those songs I really, really dug. So I would say Moon Above, Sun Below as the biggest deep cut from Pale Communion. Next, we get to 2016 with the album Sorceress, which I would say, apart from the title track, Wildflowers, and Will O' the Wisp, any other song is fair game, and the one I decided to go with is the longest cut on this album, Strange Brew. Like, this one was starting to push a little bit back into, like, a heavier direction, but it's still got a lot of great mood shifts, melodies, and just wonderful darkness to it. Like, the way it starts off with these, like, synths and fluttering moments here and there with piano, but Michael delivering like an almost anguished, low, clean vocal. And then you get like wild drums that almost sound like Ian Pace from Deep Purple. And the guitars get heavier in the middle of this song to really kind of bring out, like, yeah, let's get a little bit back to the heavy. And so that's why Strange Brew is my pick from Sorceress. Then we get to 2019 with the album Encauda Venenum. And this one, there was mainly two songs I left off, and they were Heart in Hand and Dignity. So I decided to go with the closer, All Things Will Pass. Just basically, I mean, again, like, it's got a lot of prog rock to it. It's got a lot of great epic qualities and atmosphere, but it also gets into some of the heaviest stuff they had done in quite a while. Like, it definitely feels like a more progressive metal song rather than a progressive rock song, because you do get heavier guitars that just feel like the heaviest tone you could hear in the 70s. Almost like a early Black Sabbath tone, maybe even like a little bit of a I would guess you could say Van Halen tone, like early Van Halen tone, only not as clean. It's a little bit dirtier sounding, but it definitely made this song punch in a big way, and that's why I'm going with All Things Will Pass. Which brings us to the most recent album, and that is The Last Will and Testament in 2024, where basically they decide to go back to being a progressive death metal band that just sounds like it was recorded in the 70s. So kind of like the perfect like middle ground between Watershed and Heritage. So this one, apart from I would say paragraph 1, you could have gone with any pick on here. However, I'm going again with a closer, A Story Never Told. Simply put, it's not the heaviest song on the album. In fact, it's the most mellow. But man, is it arguably one of the most beautiful songs that Opeth has ever written. The solos at the end by Frederick Hawkinson, one of the best Opeth solos ever. It definitely feels like something you would hear straight from like David Gilmour. And it was just wonderful. And even like the hooks just come at you in such a magical way that it's hard to ignore and it's hard to deny. So that's why I went with A Story Never Told as my deep cut from The Last Will Testament. And ladies and gentlemen, those are my deep cuts for Opeth for this first edition of Levi's Deep Cuts. What did you guys think of the songs I chose? Do you think these are appropriate songs? And keep in mind, the songs I left off were like hits or singles or major live staples. So just to kind of get you guys more familiar with like the lesser known songs or songs that didn't get as much appreciation. And hopefully through this video, you guys will have listened to all these songs and think, you know what? These were all really killer songs. Kudos to you, Levi, for turning me on to some different tracks from a band that I've been wanting to get into, but just have only heard like the big recommended songs. So I'm glad I can help if that's the case. But anyways, like I said, what did you guys think of this list? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. But as far as the next band I'm going to talk about in this series, that will be in May, and it's going to be Alice in Chains, which, for that, I'm going to change up the rules just a little bit, but we'll get to that when we get to that. But anyways, thank you guys for watching, and until next time, keep your horns high and your dreams wet.